Hollywood tries to convince us that criminals are geniuses playing 4D chess. In reality, most of them are fighting a losing battle against common sense. We are about to look at 101 scams that didn't just fail, they imploded immediately. These aren't masterminds. These are people who challenged logic and lost before they even walked out the door. 1. A genius in Pittsburgh walked into a bank and slapped a $1 million bill on the counter, asking for change. Minor problem, the US Treasury has never printed a bill that high. The teller didn't even need to check for a watermark before calling the cops on this ambitious billionaire wannabe. 2. One criminal mastermind decided to rob a bank using a threatening note. He successfully got the cash and ran, but he made a critical error. He wrote the demand note on the back of his own deposit slip, complete with his full name and home address. Police were waiting on his porch before he even got home. 3. Counterfeiting takes skill, or at least a basic understanding of paper. A woman in Tennessee tried paying for gas with money she printed on her home inkjet. The bills were on regular printer paper, cut crookedly with scissors, and get this, she only printed one side. The clerk just laughed and dialed 911. 4. We all know the Nigerian prince, but have you met the Nigerian astronaut? Scammers actually sent emails claiming a cousin was stuck on a Soviet space station for 14 years and needed $3 million for a return flight. If you believe NASA forgot an entire human in orbit, you honestly deserve to lose your money. 5. In Tehran, a sorcerer sold a man a potion that supposedly made him invisible to everyone. The customer drank it, walked straight into a bank, and started snatching money from people's hands. He was genuinely shocked when customers tackled him, proving that the only thing disappearing that day was his freedom. 6. An employee in New Jersey wanted a workers' comp payout, so she filed a dramatic injury claim and described a serious accident in detail. The problem was, she posted smiling vacation photos from the same day, complete with timestamps, tag location, and a caption about living my best life. Insurance investigators didn't need a doctor, they needed Wi-Fi. 7. Phone scammers usually target the elderly, but one unlucky caller dialed a number and threatened the recipient with immediate arrest if he did not pay up. The problem? He had accidentally called the cell phone of the local police chief. The chief kept him on the line while officers traced the call and knocked on his door. 8. Steve Commissar sold a solar-powered clothes dryer in national magazines for $50. Thousands of people sent in checks, expecting high-tech gear. What they received in the mail was a literal length of rope to hang clothes outside. Technically, it was solar-powered, but the fraud squad didn't appreciate the joke and sent him to prison. 9. Charles Ray Fuller tried to cash a check for $360 billion at a bank in Texas. He claimed his girlfriend gave it to him to start a record label. The bank tellers were suspicious, mostly because the check was written on a personal account that had a negative balance of $10. 10. A thief stole a cart full of electronics from Walmart and immediately walked to the customer service desk to return them for cash. The plan fell apart when the clerk asked for a receipt, and then pointed out that the items still had Target security tags on them. He was arrested while still standing in the returns line. 11. Two geniuses in Iowa planned a robbery but forgot to buy masks, so they improvised by coloring their faces with permanent black marker. It was a complete failure that hid absolutely zero facial features. Police recognized them instantly, and their mugshots remain legendary for looking less like master criminals and more like a failed art project. 12. A man tried to claim a lottery jackpot by literally gluing numbers from old tickets onto a losing one. He didn't even do a good job. The glued numbers were peeling off at weird angles, and you could see the dried paste. The clerk took one look at this arts and crafts disaster, didn't even bother scanning it, and called security to collect the artist. 13. A scammer called a woman claiming he had kidnapped her daughter, using a high-pitched voice pretending to be her screaming. The problem was, the woman's daughter was standing right next to her in the kitchen, eating cereal. The mom put the phone on speaker so they could both enjoy the performance before hanging up. 14. A man in Ohio walked into a bank attempting to cash a check for $100,000. The teller became suspicious immediately, not just because of the amount, but because the check was clearly signed by God. The bank manager had to calmly explain that without two forms of photo ID from the Almighty himself, The transaction was unfortunately declined. 15. A woman in Spain legally registered herself as the owner of the sun and tried to charge solar power companies a fee for using her property. While she technically got the documents, her plan backfired spectacularly when legal experts pointed out she would also be financially liable for all skin cancer, droughts, and heat stroke damages caused by her star. 16. An entrepreneur in the UK tried selling authentic snowballs online for £10 each, claiming they were fresh from the mountains. He shipped them in standard cardboard boxes via regular mail. Obviously, the customers received soggy, leaking boxes of absolutely nothing, and payment processors shut him down for selling a product that literally vanished before delivery. 17. An artist sold an invisible sculpture for $18,000, giving the buyer a certificate of empty air. Inspired by this, copycats on Craigslist tried selling invisible cars. One buyer actually met up for the exchange, stared at an empty parking spot for a solid minute, and finally realized he was about to hand over cash for a whole lot of nothing. 18. A mugger in Colombia decided to rob a group of people training in a local park. He pulled a knife and demanded wallets, failing to realize he had interrupted an advanced jiu-jitsu class mid-session. The students didn't run away. They used him as a live training dummy for their takedowns until the police arrived to rescue him. 19. A car thief used a high-tech signal jammer to unlock a vehicle, thinking he was a cyberpunk mastermind. He got in, ready to speed off like in the movies, but realized the car had a manual transmission. He didn't know how to drive a stick and stalled it 3 times in the driveway before fleeing on foot in total shame. 20. A man robbed a convenience store and demanded the clerk put all the cash into a specific bag he brought with him. He ran off successfully, but he had handed the clerk a clear plastic bag containing his own probation paperwork. His full name, home address, and case number were visible through the bag, basically solving the crime for the cops. 21. The classic quick change artist tries to confuse cashiers to get extra change. One guy tried this at a fast food joint but got confused by his own fast-talking math. He argued for 5 minutes that the cashier owed him $10, only to realize he had accidentally handed the cashier an extra $20 bill during the confusion, paying them to rob him. 22. A teenager tried to get into a club with a fake ID that was doomed from the start. The name on the card was Thor Odinson, and the photo was literally a publicity headshot of actor Chris Hemsworth. The bouncer, who had actually seen a movie in the last decade, confiscated the card and laughed the god of thunder off the property. 23. A scammer called a victim claiming they won a new Mercedes but needed to wire a shipping fee. The victim played along but mentioned they were currently standing at the police station filing a report for a different scam. The scammer panicked so hard, he hung up and deleted his number, effectively scamming himself out of a potential lead. 24. A criminal rented a luxury car for 1 day and immediately listed it for sale on a classified site for cash. He found a buyer, took the money, and handed over the keys. The buyer drove exactly 2 blocks before the rental company's GPS tracker killed the engine because the car left the authorized zone, leaving him stranded. 25. A man in China spent months carving a piece of stone into the exact shape and weight of a coin to use in a vending machine. He spent hours of manual labor just to save $1. He dropped it in, and the machine just ate it without giving a credit. He worked for days just to lose a rock. 26. A website called Rent a Hitman is actually a parody site designed to catch criminals, but people still apply. One woman filled out a service request form to remove her ex-husband, using her real name, address, and phone number. She was genuinely surprised when the hitman, who arrived to discuss the contract, was a detective from the local police department. 27. A man tried to sell gold bars to a pawn shop, claiming they were ancient family heirlooms worth thousands. The owner noticed the bars felt incredibly light and scratched one with a key, revealing they were just lead weights painted with gold spray paint. The scammer had forgotten that gold is heavy and that spray paint smells like, well, paint. 28. A telephone scammer called a man claiming his computer had a virus and needed immediate remote access to fix it. Unluckily for the caller, the victim was a cybersecurity expert who reversed the connection. The expert accessed the scammer's own webcam and watched him panic as his own files started disappearing from his desktop. 29. a man decided to rob a GameStop, demanding cash from the register at gunpoint. It was a bold move considering he had just submitted a job application to the manager 20 minutes earlier. He had handed them his resume, full name, phone number, and personal info, then came back wearing a mask like they wouldn't connect the dots. 30. A man tried to fake a slip-and-fall injury in a grocery store cafeteria to get an insurance payout. He poured water on the floor, laid down, and started screaming for help. He forgot that security cameras don't blink, and the footage clearly showed him gently lying down and checking his watch before starting his performance. 31. A customer at a Dairy Queen tried to pay for a Blizzard with a $200 bill featuring George W. Bush on the front. The cashier immediately recognized the fake because, aside from the wrong president, there is no such thing as a $200 bill. The man insisted it was legal tender until the police arrived to explain currency. 32. A famous psychic was arrested for fraud after charging clients thousands to remove curses from their money. When the police arrived at her storefront to arrest her, she seemed genuinely surprised by the raid. The officers noted the irony that for someone who claims to see the future, she completely failed to predict her own booking photo. 33. A scammer called the Federal Trade Commission's fraud hotline trying to pitch a fake debt relief program to the person who answered. He was essentially trying to scam the exact government department dedicated to catching people like him. The agent kept him on the line for 20 minutes just to record enough evidence to track him down. 34. An elderly woman received a frantic call saying her grandson was in jail and needed bail money immediately. She knew it was a scam instantly because her grandson was currently 3 months old and asleep in the next room. She told the scammer that unless the baby robbed a bank in his diapers, she wasn't paying a cent. 35. A man altered a check from $1 to $100 by adding 2 zeros to the number box. However, he forgot to change the written amount on the line below. The bank teller noticed the check said 100 in numbers, but $1 in words, and the police were called for a $99 discrepancy. 36. A group of scammers set up a fake toll booth on a public road that had always been free. They wore reflective vests and collected cash for hours. Their operation ended when a state trooper pulled up, realized he was being charged to drive on his own patrol route, and arrested the entire crew for blocking traffic. 37. A thief stole a woman's purse and immediately went to the nearest store to use her credit card. He didn't realize the woman had followed him into the shop. As he tried to swipe the card, she tapped him on the shoulder and asked the cashier to check the ID, leading to a very awkward and immediate arrest. 38. A man started a Ponzi scheme but recruited his own family members as the first investors. When the returns didn't materialize within a week, his own mother reported him to the authorities. It is hard to run a global financial conspiracy when you can't even scam your mom out of her bingo money without getting grounded. 39. A taxpayer claimed a hefty deduction for a security dog used to guard his business inventory. The IRS audited him and discovered the business was a home office and the guard dog was actually a 3-pound Yorkshire Terrier. The auditor was not convinced the dog was a deterrent to anyone except maybe a very small squirrel. 40. A criminal tried to buy illegal substances using counterfeit money he printed on his home computer. The dealer he tried to pay turned out to be an undercover police officer. He was charged with both drug possession and counterfeiting, effectively getting a 2-for-1 deal on felony charges because he was too cheap to use real cash. 41. Scammers taped a broken sign on a bank's night deposit slot and placed a cardboard box underneath it labeled "Temporary Deposit Bin." Amazingly, people actually threw envelopes of cash into the unsecured box. The plan failed because a random passerby walked up and stole the cardboard box before the scammers could return, proving there is no honor among thieves, especially when one leaves the loot gift-wrapped on the sidewalk. 42. A robber in London entered a shop, pulled a gun, and demanded cash. To free up his hands to open his duffel bag, he absent-mindedly handed the gun to the cashier. The cashier, now holding the weapon, instinctively pointed it back at the robber, who fled in confusion. It was likely the only time a criminal has politely armed his victim before the crime, effectively arresting himself by proxy. 43. A woman in Florida called 911 to report a theft, and demanded an officer come out immediately. Her complaint was that an online scammer took her money and then blocked her. When dispatch asked for details, she calmly explained she had paid in gift cards because the guy said it was safer. Police arrived, and she learned that 911 is not the refund department. 44. MacArthur Wheeler robbed 2 banks in broad daylight without wearing a mask. When caught, he was genuinely shocked because he had covered his face in lemon juice. He believed that since lemon juice is used as invisible ink, it would render his face invisible to security cameras. In reality, all he achieved was severe eye irritation and a crystal-clear mugshot of a citrus-scented criminal. 45. A man tried to rob a gun store in Washington using only a baseball bat and a knife. He walked past a police car parked outside and entered a shop full of armed customers and staff. Within seconds, he had 4 different firearms pointed at him. He literally brought a knife to a gunfight inside a warehouse specifically designed to sell guns to people who enjoy using them. 46. A college student staged his own kidnapping to extort ransom money from his parents. He sent them photos of himself bound and gagged. The FBI tracked the phone immediately and found him alone in a motel room, eating pizza and watching cartoons. He went from hostage to grounded for life in record time, proving that federal fraud charges are significantly more expensive than tuition. 47. A robber successfully grabbed the cash from a convenience store register but made a critical logistical error. In his rush to grab the money with both hands, he set his car keys down on the counter. The clerk grabbed the keys, leaving the thief to run home on foot. He essentially traded his vehicle for $200 in small bills, which is arguably the worst trade-in deal in automotive history. 48. A man tried to deposit a check for $95,000 that he received in the mail. It was clearly marked non-negotiable and for promotional use only in large letters. He argued with the teller that it was real money until police arrived to explain how direct mail marketing works. It takes a special kind of optimism to believe a junk mail flyer is a legitimate windfall. 49. A thief snatched a purse and sprinted away, but he was wearing pants that were far too loose. As he ran, his pants fell down around his ankles, tripping him instantly. He face-planted into the pavement and lay there until the police arrived. He was charged with robbery, but the officers likely wanted to add a secondary charge for committing a fashion crime that ruined his getaway. 50. A criminal fleeing from police decided to jump a tall fence to escape into a secure compound. He managed to clear the barbed wire, only to realize he had jumped directly into the exercise yard of the local prison. He was immediately taken into custody by the guards, saving the taxpayers the cost of transportation by delivering himself directly to his new cell. 51. A man posted a photo of himself on Facebook holding a thick stack of stolen cash with the caption, "I'm rich." He had robbed a bank hours earlier. The police didn't even have to look for him. His friends tagged him in the comments, and the GPS location was attached to the post. It proves that while crime might pay, posting the evidence on social media ensures you won't keep the paycheck. 52. During a snowy winter night, a burglar broke into a garage and stole a set of tools. He walked home through the fresh snow, leaving a perfect trail of footprints from the crime scene directly to his front door. Police simply followed the tracks and knocked on his door 10 minutes later, making him the only criminal in history caught because he forgot how weather works. 53. A bank robber hailed an Uber to use as his getaway vehicle. He got in the car with a bag of money and told the driver to step on it. The driver, realizing what was happening, drove him directly to a police station and locked the doors. The robber probably gave the driver a 1-star rating, but the police were happy to provide 5-star accommodations. 54. A man tried to break into a vending machine by rocking it back and forth to dislodge a snack. He tipped it too far and the heavy machine fell over, pinning him against the wall. He wasn't hurt, but he was trapped there for 2 hours until the fire department cut him loose. He endured public humiliation just to avoid paying $1.50 for a candy bar he never got to eat. 55. A woman tried to cash a check belonging to her deceased husband, but she brought the husband with her to the bank. He was very much alive and standing next to her, completely unaware she was telling the teller he was dead. The teller awkwardly asked the ghost for his ID, likely leading to a very quiet and uncomfortable car ride home for the couple. 56. A thief in Seattle attempted to siphon gas from a parked motorhome in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, he plugged his hose into the sewage tank instead of the fuel tank. The owner awoke to the sound of retching and found the thief on the ground, regretting every life choice that led to him inhaling raw waste. 57. A man appeared in court to pay a fine for a previous crime, which sounds responsible until he handed the clerk a stack of counterfeit bills. The clerk noticed the ink was still wet, and the paper felt wrong. He arrived with a minor misdemeanor and left with a fresh felony charge, proving that trying to fix a mistake with a crime is rarely a solid strategy. 58. A robber decided to hold up a donut shop late at night, apparently unaware of the stereotype regarding police officers and donuts. He walked in and pulled a weapon, only to realize the only 3 customers in the shop were uniformed officers on their break. It was arguably the safest robbery in history for everyone except the robber. 59. A burglar broke into a house and, while ransacking the place, decided to check his Facebook profile on the homeowner's computer. He forgot to log out before fleeing with the loot. The police didn't need forensics. They just checked the status update he posted from the crime scene, which essentially served as a digital confession signed with his full name. 60. A man tried to forge a prescription for powerful painkillers using a computer and a printer. He was arrested immediately at the pharmacy because he had misspelled the name of the drug and the word physician. It turns out that to commit white-collar medical fraud, you need at least a 3rd grade spelling level to pass the initial screening. 61. A genius thief stole a box of GPS tracking devices from a tech store, thinking he could sell them on the black market. He didn't realize the devices were fully charged and activated. The police simply watched a dot moving across a map on their computer screen and drove directly to his house to retrieve the inventory. 62. A woman tried to sell a cloned credit card to a stranger she met at a bar. The stranger turned out to be a Secret Service agent who was literally in town for a conference on credit card fraud. She essentially pitched her illegal product to one of the few people on Earth specifically trained to arrest her for it. 63. 3 thieves broke into a house and stole what they thought was a box of cocaine. They snorted the white powder, only to discover it was the cremated ashes of the homeowner's grandfather and 2 heavy dogs. They were eventually caught, but the knowledge that they had inhaled a dead relative was likely punishment enough. 64. A man robbed a bank, successfully getting away with a bag of cash. However, instead of fleeing the area, he walked outside and immediately tried to deposit the stolen money into the bank's own ATM to secure it. The cameras captured him depositing the exact bills he had just stolen, creating a perfectly closed loop of stupidity. 65. A fugitive fleeing from police on foot decided to hide in a dense patch of bushes to evade the K-9 unit. He successfully stayed hidden for an hour, but he had chosen a massive patch of poison ivy. He turned himself in shortly after, begging for medical attention because the itch was significantly worse than prison. 66. A man called 911 to ask the dispatcher a hypothetical question about how much jail time one receives for growing marijuana. When the dispatcher asked where he was calling from, he gave his address. Police arrived to find a massive grow operation, confirming that curiosity doesn't just kill the cat. It also gets the cat indicted. 67. A thief broke into an escape room business after hours looking for cash. He managed to get into the lobby but accidentally locked himself inside one of the puzzle rooms. He couldn't solve the riddles to get out and was found the next morning by the owner, trapped in a game he never signed up to play. 68. A man tried to use a stolen credit card at a grocery store. When the cashier asked to see some ID to verify the name, the man handed over his own legitimate driver's license. The cashier noticed the names didn't match and called the police, while the thief stood there confused about why his honesty was backfiring. 69. A taxpayer tried to claim a massive deduction on his returns for supporting a dependent. The problem was that the dependent he listed was a very famous Hollywood actress. The IRS auditor, who had seen a movie in the last 20 years, flagged the return immediately, realizing the movie star probably wasn't living in this guy's basement in Ohio. 70. A young man tried to rob a store with a stick, but the clerk refused to give him money. Frustrated, the robber told the clerk to call the police so they would see how serious he was. The clerk complied, and the robber waited patiently for the officers to arrive, apparently thinking they would help him negotiate the transaction. 71. A robber held up a pharmacy wearing his work uniform, complete with a name tag that clearly displayed his first name. He didn't even work at a different store. The pharmacy was right next door to his workplace. Police simply walked over to the burger joint, ordered a meal, and waited for his shift to end to arrest him. 72. A man was pulled over for a routine traffic stop and found to have an outstanding warrant for his arrest. When the officer asked him to step out of the vehicle, the man calmly handed him a get-out-of-jail-free card from a Monopoly board game. The officer appreciated the humor but unfortunately did not accept Parker Brothers currency as a valid legal defense. 73. A criminal decided to rob a jewelry store while wearing a court-ordered ankle monitor from a previous offense. He apparently forgot that the device's entire purpose is to track his exact location in real time via GPS. The prosecution simply printed out a map of his movements, which looked less like an alibi and more like a detailed confession. 74. A car thief stole a vehicle and immediately tried to sell the title to a buyer in cash, promising it was totally legit. The buyer asked one simple question: "So why are we meeting in a grocery store parking lot at midnight?" The thief panicked, tried to walk it back, and ended up surrounded by police who were already watching the meetup. 75. A pedestrian tried to commit insurance fraud by throwing himself onto the hood of a slow-moving car at a crosswalk. He rolled around in fake agony, claiming he was hit. He stopped screaming immediately when the driver pointed to the dashboard camera that had recorded him standing, waiting, and then jumping on the car like a stuntman on a budget. 76. A burglar broke into a house and found nothing of value, so he decided to grab a snack from the fridge. He got comfortable, ate a sandwich, and accidentally left his own cell phone charging on the kitchen counter when he left. Police didn't even have to track him. They just waited for him to call his own phone to see if anyone found it. 77. A man trying to evade police during a foot chase decided to hide in the drop ceiling of a convenience store. He crawled over the tiles, thinking he was invisible, until his weight caused the ceiling to collapse. He fell through the tiles and landed directly in front of the officers, effectively dropping in for his own arrest. 78. Several people participated in a viral hack that claimed if you deposited a fake check at an ATM and withdrew the cash immediately, it was free money. They were genuinely surprised when their bank accounts went negative and fraud charges were filed days later. They learned the hard way that a bank error in your favor is a board game mechanic, not a financial reality. 79. A robber successfully looted a home but came outside to find his getaway driver had panicked and driven off without him. Furious and stranded, the robber called 911 to report the theft of his getaway vehicle. He gave the dispatcher a description of the car and his own location, ensuring the police picked him up for a ride to the station. 80. A minor tried to enter a bar using a fake ID, but the bouncer noticed the birth year had been altered with a blue ballpoint pen. The ink was a different shade of blue and smeared when touched. The bouncer didn't even confiscate it. He just handed it back and suggested that next time, the kid should invest in a printer instead of an art supply kit. 81. A polite bank robber got in line and waited 20 minutes for the next available teller because the bank was busy. During the wait, he got hot and took off his ski mask to wipe the sweat from his face, looking directly into the security cameras. By the time he reached the counter to demand money, the police were already walking through the front door. 82. A man under the influence of narcotics broke into a building he thought was an abandoned house to find a place to sleep. He kicked down the door and was immediately tackled by a dozen armed men. He had successfully broken into the barracks of a SWAT team facility during a shift change, which is statistically the worst building in the world to invade. 83. A porch pirate stole a package from a doorstep, unaware it was a bait box rigged by the homeowner. The box detonated a canister of green dye and extremely fine glitter the moment he opened it in his car. He was arrested shortly after because it is incredibly difficult to explain to a patrol officer why you look like a radioactive disco ball. 84. A burglar broke into a home late at night, but instead of stealing electronics, he decided to cook himself a full pasta dinner. The warm meal made him sleepy, and he passed out on the living room couch. He was woken up the next morning by the homeowner, who was standing over him with a shotgun and a very confused look on his face. 85. A local drug dealer called the police to report that a client had paid him with counterfeit money. He was so offended by the fake bills that he wanted to press charges for fraud. When the officers arrived, they agreed the money was fake, but they also felt compelled to address the large bag of illegal narcotics sitting on his coffee table. 86. A burglar decided to enter a home through the chimney to avoid the alarm system on the doors and windows. He unfortunately got stuck halfway down and remained wedged there for 10 hours, screaming for help. Police and firefighters eventually had to dismantle the masonry to extract him, leaving him covered in soot and facing charges for breaking, entering, and ruining a perfectly good fireplace. 87. A robber attempted to make a dramatic exit from a shop he had just looted, running full speed toward the glass door. He failed to notice the large pull sign and slammed face first into the push door, knocking himself unconscious. He woke up in handcuffs with a headache that was likely more painful than the prison sentence he was about to receive. 88. An identity thief walked into a bank to apply for a massive loan using a stolen identity. He was confident until he sat down at the desk and realized the loan officer sitting across from him was the actual victim whose identity he had stolen. It was a statistical miracle that resulted in the shortest loan application process in banking history. 89. A man was pulled over for speeding and refused to roll down his window, screaming that he was a sovereign citizen and that the laws of the road did not apply to him. He spent 20 minutes lecturing the officer on maritime law before the officer simply broke the window and arrested him. He learned that while he might not believe in the law definitely believes in him. 90. A counterfeiter printed a stack of $20 bills on his home inkjet printer, but felt they looked too crisp. To age them, he put the paper money into a washing machine on a spin cycle. He opened the lid to find a worthless pile of wet, white paper pulp, effectively laundering his own money into absolute trash before he could even spend it. 91. A home invader broke into a house but was confronted by the homeowner, who happened to be armed. The intruder panicked, ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and called 911 to report that a crazy man with a gun was chasing him. He was very relieved when the police arrived, until they put the handcuffs on him instead of the homeowner. 92. A thief stole a smartphone from a woman's purse and immediately decided to take a celebratory selfie with the stolen device. He didn't realize the phone was set to automatically upload all photos to the owner's cloud storage. The victim was showing the thief's smiling face to the police officers on her tablet before he had even left the block. 93. A man spotted a bicycle unlocked on the street and decided to ride off with it. He didn't realize it was a bait bike, equipped with a remote locking mechanism and GPS, parked directly in front of a police precinct. He pedaled about 10 feet before the wheels locked up, throwing him over the handlebars and landing him at the feet of 3 officers on their lunch break. 94. A robber crafted a homemade mask out of duct tape to hide his identity during a heist. However, he forgot to cut holes for his eyes before putting it on. He stumbled into the store, knocked over a display rack, and had to peel the tape off his face just to see where the register was, revealing his face to every camera in the room. 95. A carjacker forced a woman out of her vehicle and sped off, only to realize a minute later that there was a baby strapped into the car seat in the back. He panicked, turned around, and drove back to the mother to return the child. He was promptly scolded by the furious mother and then arrested by the police she had already called. 96. A scammer tried to pay for luxury goods using a fake credit card that was visibly poorly made. When the clerk looked suspicious, the scammer told him to just run the numbers. The clerk noticed the card number was simply 1234 5678 9101 Ilonval 121. He pretended to run the card while actually dialing security, keeping the scammer busy with small talk about how rare such a sequence is. 97. A man walked into a car dealership and asked to test drive a high-performance sports car. The salesman asked for collateral, so the man handed over his own driver's license and keys to his current car. He then drove the sports car off the lot and stole it. Police simply drove to the address listed on the license he left behind and waited for him to come home. 98. A job applicant submitted a resume claiming he had a degree from a prestigious university to get a high-paying executive job. The employer called the university to verify the degree, only to find out the applicant had never been a student there. The applicant was arrested for fraud because he had forged the diploma but misspelled the word university in the header. 99. A man on probation was required to take a drug test. He tried to cheat by using water from the toilet bowl to fill the sample cup, thinking it would pass as clean urine. The lab tech failed him immediately, not because of drugs, but because the sample was cold, clear, and chemically identical to tap water, proving he was either cheating or legally a fish. 100. A criminal duo decided to rob a building during what they thought was a private event. They burst in waving weapons, only to discover they'd interrupted a self-defense seminar where everyone had their phones out recording. Within seconds, the two geniuses were surrounded, identified, and trending locally before they even made it back to the door. 101. A man broke into a police station through a back window, believing it was a wealthy private residence. He crept through the dark hallways until he entered the squad room where the night shift officers were having coffee. He is likely the only burglar in history to break into jail, saving the legal system the time and expense of hunting him down. That was a marathon of human failure. Now, I want to know your experience. What is the single dumbest lie or scam someone has ever tried to pull on you personally? I'm not talking about a spam email. I mean a specific moment where a human being looked you in the eye and insulted your intelligence so badly that you almost felt sorry for them. Drop the story in the comments so we can all judge them together. If watching these disasters made you feel like a genius, destroy the like button and subscribe.